Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
This week, Newsnight has exposed extraordinary disputes with an influential parliamentary committee over British arms sales to Saudi Arabia for use in the ongoing war in Yemen, where many civilians have been bombed. Today, Crispin Blunt, one of the key MPs on the committee who appears to want to water down passages of the report, complained in Parliament about the documents being leaked to this programme, even calling for private investigators to be called in. The draft report revealed by Newsnight on Tuesday said that it was highly likely that weapons supplied by a British company had been used to violate international humanitarian and human rights laws in Yemen. Yesterday, we revealed that some members of the committee had submitted amendments attempting to water down the language of the report. For example, in this passage of the report, Crispin Blunt and John Speller wanted to downgrade the phrase "very serious evidence of human rights violations" simply to allegations, and to remove altogether a reference to cluster munitions and targeting of civilian areas. Today, we spoke to one member of the committee who believes that Britain may well have broken its own laws on arms exports.
There is a very serious risk that Britain is breaking its own laws on this, and not just our own domestic law, but the international treaties which we're party to. Certainly the evidence that I've seen about potential breaches of humanitarian law puts us really in that situation where we may not be able to be sure that the arms we're exporting are not being used against civilians, and that's not good enough.
Point of order, Mr. Crispin Blunt.
But this morning, Crispin Blunt told Parliament that he was outraged that the committee was unable to deliberate on its report without it being leaked to Newsnight.
On Tuesday, Newsnight produced excerpts of the text of the draft report. Subsequent to that, last night, Newsnight reported extracts of the amendments tabled by the Right Honourable Member for Worley and myself, which can only have come from the consolidated list of amendments which was circulated to members of the committee on Tuesday. I cannot recall an example of such deliberate and repeated leaking of information in our time in the House. Would you confirm that it would not be open to the Privileges Committee, if it's referred to them, to call in the police, as this is not a criminal matter, but they would be able to call on the services of private investigators who have the capacity to interrogate the electronic records, including deleted emails, of potential sources of this confidential and private consideration of select committees, in this instance of the greatest seriousness, involving life and death issues and the employment of tens of thousands of our fellow citizens.
Well, we're joined now by Crispin Blunt, but first a word from our political editor, Nick Watt. Now, you have news from the committee.
Yes, I understand that there was what was described as a bloody meeting of that Arms Exports Control Committee last night, because they are, as you were saying, bitterly divided over whether to say that British arms were used unlawfully by the Saudis in that conflict in Yemen. As you were hearing, there's absolute fury about the leak to Newsnight. As I understand it, every member of the 4 select committees that act as the feeders to this Arms Export Control Committee, they've received emails saying, were you the source of that leak? I understand that there's a lot of chat about MPs saying, are our emails and are our phone records going to be trawled through? Now, this evening, I managed to bump into Tobias Ellwood, the Middle East minister, as he was heading back after a difficult week in Parliament. He told me, interestingly, that the Saudi foreign minister told a meeting of MPs yesterday at Westminster, 60 MPs, that yes, Saudi Arabia has bombed schools in Yemen, but crucially said they were being used as munition dumps by the Houthis. But Tobias Ellwood was saying, look, the Saudis have got to get much better at explaining these situations, and then crucially saying that if there are allegations that international humanitarian law has been broken, it is for the Saudis in the first instance to investigate that. If Britain is not happy, then it will sanction an independent international examination. And he blamed, as he told MPs earlier this week, it was an error of the government to say that it's Britain that does the first investigation. It's the Saudis.
Nick, thank you very much indeed. And we are joined now by Crispin Blunt, Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee and a key member of the Committee on Arms Export Controls, who you saw a moment ago. He's here now with us in the studio. Crispin Blunt, good evening. First of all, you're very unhappy that we're talking about this. Why?
Well, the select committees, and this is a rather peculiar select committee because it consists of 4 individual select committees all working together. but any select committee going through the process of consideration of a report will usually start off with a draft from one person, usually the chairman of the committee, who will present a draft for his colleagues for consideration. Now, given the circumstances of this committee, which has 44 members potentially, what you presented last night and the night before was the view of one member of that committee, which had yet to have any discussion or consideration by the rest of the committee. And you then, in those circumstances, purported to put forward that this is the likely conclusion of the committee before any of the other 43 members of that committee had the opportunity to make a contribution to the discussion about it. And the way select committees work is that there is often a discussion, sometimes around drafted amendments put in, about how to get to a place where generally select committees will agree conclusions.
But we made it very clear that it was a draft. And I'm sure you would agree...
Well, no, you certainly didn't contextualise it.
Well, I think we did say it was a draft, and it was going
you said
forward
it was a draft,
last night to be looked at by the committee.
But what you did not explain was that it's a draft from one person.
Now, let me put it to you, if you would surely be the first to agree that there is a public interest in all this, because if there is, it is proved that Saudi Arabia has been using British weapons in the targeting of civilians.
There's a public interest in...
Then you would agree that we should always discuss that.
I would hope there's a public interest in everything that select committees are doing, or you would wonder why they're conducting inquiries into it. And the process by which select committees work do actually depend upon, within the committee, people being able to have a discussion around the issues concerned. And what would happen, certainly with the practice on my committee, would generally be that I would put a draft report to the committee. I would have taken the trouble to have a decent understanding of where the different members of my committee stood on the issue, and would try and put forward a text that I thought the committee was going to agree to, or one that I thought was going to command majority support. And then they have the opportunity in informal session to have an informal discussion about the direction of the report, an informal discussion about particular amendments to it, and you go through people's considered amendments in detail. And then, if there still remain disputes, the formal proceedings of the committee, which are recorded for everyone to see, if there are recorded votes, where there are disagreements of opinion, where things are then put to the vote, is all completely transparent, and everybody can see where everyone's coming from.
Let's look at this. We've got a graphic now, and you probably have seen this if you did watch the programme last night. Now, this is the initial report. There has been very serious evidence of violations of international humanitarian and human rights law by the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen. You changed that to remove allegations and to include the targeting of civilian areas and medical facilities and use of cluster munitions. I mean, these are very serious discrepancies.
Well, you've just said something that's completely incorrect. You said I changed that. I'm not going to comment on the proceedings of the committee, because there's no way you can know whether whether that was changed or whether that was changed or not.
Did you actually want that taken out or not?
But I do have to. No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to comment on the internal proceedings. This report is still in the process of consideration.
But it's in the public domain now. The draft is in the public domain.
Well, you've put the draft in the public. I'm not, and I'm not going to be further party to that. And the agreed line from the committees is that for the purposes of you and the press and everyone else, is the proper one. This is still being considered, and there'll be no further comment until this report.
But is it safe to say that the draft of the report? Can I just finish the question?
Sure.
Is it safe to say that the draft of the report, which we received, which we broadcast on Tuesday night, which was, pretty robust about possible involvement of British-made weapons in Saudi civilian targets, you don't demur from that then?
Well, I don't demur from the fact that you got hold of a draft report.
No, but do you agree? Are you saying that you
no, the issue here is a process one about what is the ability of select committees to properly hold the government to account and to be able to have discussions between themselves. This is not just about this issue, it's about every piece of work that select committees...
But there's 67 amendments put forward by you to this. Is that not...
It's about... And what that means...
But if you put forward 67... Crispin Blunt,
no, Kirsty, no, I'm not
as
discussing...
An MP, no, as an MP
I'm not
on
discussing...
this very
No,
important
I'm not discussing...
committee...
I'm not entitled to discuss the workings of this inquiry on this committee because it's still being considered in private by
But
the
did you
respective...
agree with the original
by the
draft?
respective committees. So
did you
I'm
agree
not,
with the original
so
draft?
I'm not going to... Kirsty, I'm not going to answer that question. The point is, you... I don't think you improperly obtained the material you got, but it was certainly improperly given to you. And the reason it's improper, and the reason this is...
But it is now in the public domain, and surely the electorate has a right to know that there is a serious disagreement in a key committee about whether British arms are being used to target civilians in Saudi. Now, we already know from Nick Watt that the Saudi Foreign Minister himself said that schools had been hit.
And how select committees work is that the chair puts forward his draft. There is then the opportunity for all the members to put amendments informally, to have a discussion as a committee, and then you get to what is largely, it usually can be a completely agreed text, and then that's then published unanimous, and everyone sees what the collective view. What the collective view of the committee is.
But we're in a situation now. We're in a situation now where the meeting last night finished.
Kirsty, let me then explain what happens if there is a disagreement. If there, at the end of this, there remains a formal disagreement between members of the committee about the conclusions of the report, then there is a formal recorded vote. And then people can see where people on the record...
Let's be quite clear. Let's be quite clear about what happened last night. I understand. We have been told that you walked out the meeting last night because you did not think you were going to get the amendments through. So if you walked out, the meeting wouldn't be quorate and a vote couldn't be taken. Did you walk out the meeting last night?
That betrays a misunderstanding of how this particular collection of 4 committees works.
There wasn't a vote, though, was there?
Whatever comes out of this particular, of the oversight of arms export control committees...
Did you walk out last night, Crispin Blunt? Did you walk out the committee?
I am not going to talk about a committee process that is still under consideration.
The suggestion is here that this report could not be completed and voted upon because you walked out last night because you were unhappy that your amendments did not get through. Your amendments watering down this report did not get through.
And the reason why this is so serious is because select committees are meant to work on a basis of trust, that the discussion you have is not, during the course of the discussion, then subject to consideration. And the contextualisation you put this in last night meant that about 26,000 people have received, given that it was, Dear Crispin Blunt and John Speller MP, please F off on the Saudi arms sale issues. You're totally convicted in favour of Saudi. That is a product of the contextualisation you put in.
But it was in the public domain and we reported it. I'm afraid I'm going to have to end it there.
And the fact it was
Crispin
completely
Blunt.
improper for the way that the information was given to you.
Thank you very much, Crispin Blunt.
I've been getting away with it all